Welcome to the Brief on Grief. I am your host, Walter Sanderson. I am so glad that you decided to join us for yet another episode. I'm just going to jump right into it. Many of us know growing up, we watched many sitcoms. And one sitcom in particular that's been on my mind was the sitcom Family Matters. The Family Matters with Eddie Winslow, his dad, but most importantly, Steve Urkel. I point out Steve Urkel because there were times in the show where Steve Urkel would say, "What did you do?" And sometimes Steve Urkel would even say, if he really got himself into some trouble, he would say, "Did I do that?" And for this episode, I want you to think about, did I do that? Or most importantly, did you say that? I want to share with you some comfort and, if I can, an apology for those that have been mishandled by someone, or you're being mishandled currently, possibly, while you are grieving. My message today is, my hopes is to help someone not say the wrong thing to someone at the wrong time. Want to make sure you don't say the wrong thing to somebody at the wrong time. Many of us unfortunately know what it feels like to sit on the front row of a pew in a church, or in the front row of a funeral home. Many of us know what it's like to be standing at the burial site and maybe even at the bedside as that loved one takes their last breath. When you really think about it, we never forget those moments, and they are embedded in our minds forever. But the reason I'm pointing this out is because it is in these moments that you and I are in a church, that you and I are in a funeral home, we're at a graveside, or possibly at the bedside of the loved one. And it's at these moments when we are experiencing and sitting there with the greatest pain in our lives, with a hurt that you and I thought we would never have to feel or imagine or experience. And it's in these moments that I feel people have those moments that I would like to say, did you really say that? Those moments I'm talking about, when somebody comes up to you and they say things without really thinking about what they're saying. And I want to help somebody on today. If you have heard these words, I want to apologize to you, because many of us do not know how to help and handle those that are grieving. Or we say things that we falsely learn that people said was the right things to say. Here is the reality. We mean well, but when it said it, well, it just sounded mean. It sounded inconsiderate. And I have witnessed this accounts as I have been doing funerals. I've witnessed these accounts for people that I've given counsel to. And it makes you want to say sometimes, did you really say that? Let me help somebody on today and ask you, have you ever done that? The moment somebody is in their greatest place of sadness and sorrow, there are times people say things that cause us to get angry and frustrated while we are yet sitting there. I'm here to just say to you, I've been in some funerals, I've been in some services of my own loved ones, and I look at somebody, they may come and put their hand on my shoulder and they say something, and I look at them and say, are you really serious? Did you just really say that? And for this episode, I want to help not only the grievers, but I want to help those that think or want to try to help somebody that's grieving. Because sometimes we think the things that we normally say, and we hear people say, well, let me just tell you, it's not right. Let's talk for a minute because I'm not afraid to share that I have even experienced this in the house of God, in a church where somebody has lost the love of their life, and somebody walks up to them with their saved and sanctified self and says something that just makes it worse. Something like a woman that may be sitting there that just lost a loved one, and you go, well, God loved him best. And it's in that moment that the griever goes, really? Did you just say that? What about the times when I've seen a woman grieving over her child, the type of loss that many say that there is no greater pain, and somebody walks up and says, well, God doesn't make mistakes. I'm here to tell you, for the griever in that moment, it surely does feel like somebody made a mistake. And this is not a knock on anybody's faith or to shoot down anybody from the faith of Christianity. But I'm here to tell you a lot of things that are said to people are not helpful. And I'm trying to help you not hurt somebody more than they're already hurting. You've even heard sometimes somebody says after somebody's lost a spouse, it's going to be all right. Especially if this is a young person, you say something like, you can get married again. Did you really just say that to the person who is sitting there grieving the love of their life? What about when you hear people say to somebody that's lost their mom, lost their dad, and walk up to them and go, they're in a better place? Did you just really say that? That they're in a better place? The person that's grieving is simply saying, the better place would have been still here with me. I've even heard somebody say to somebody that was getting a divorce, going through a really bad divorce, and somebody walks up to them in those moments that they're grieving beyond what you can imagine, and you say something like, well, you can always find somebody else. I don't think he really deserved you. She really deserved you to begin with. You can always get married again. Oh, you're young. You could meet somebody. Did you really just say that to somebody that is grieving and dealing with this pain? I've even seen at times somebody has lost their job and somebody walks up to them and goes, well, you know what? Maybe it's just some writing on the wall. Maybe you don't need to stress over that job. And this is a job that this person has worked for many years of their life. This is the only job they know. And you come up to them and tell them, you can get another job, right? They turn around and look at you and says, which job? Do you have one for me? I just can't imagine that there are times when we have to be careful with what we say to people that is so inconsiderate. What about the person that loses their pet and you turn around and go, well, it was only a dog. It was only a cat. Or what's worse is, you could just always get you another one. I don't care if it's somebody's dog, somebody's cat, somebody's rabbit, somebody's hamster. It meant a lot to them. And a lot of times they don't look at it as a pet. They see them as a family member. Did you really just say what you just said? What about when somebody loses their property and the house is destroyed by fire? Now, I know they are happy that they're still alive, but to walk up to them in that moment and go, it was only a house. You can always get another house. So glad that you're alive. Yes, it may be true. And yes, you may mean well, but did you really just say that? Do you know how many memories was lost in this fire? And that is what they're really grieving. Or somebody who has lost somebody to a great tragedy or went through a great tragedy themselves, and somebody walks up to them and goes and quotes the scripture from Romans 8:28 and says, all things work together for good, and somebody is trying to find the good in this. Did you really just say that to somebody? People lose friends. But I just want to help somebody on this episode to tell you to stop saying these cliche sayings, these church sayings, things that don't even make sense to the person that's grieving. When somebody loses a spouse, when somebody loses a loved one, when somebody loses something, I need you to know in that moment, sometimes it's best to say nothing. Sometimes it's best to just tell them, hey, if you need me, I'm here for you. If you need me, just call me. If there's anything I can do, you let me know. Let people sometimes tell you how they feel. Let people tell you about their pain. You don't need to tell people how they feel and how they're going to get over. It is not you. So please stop doing that. There are times when you do that, you end up minimizing the pain that the person is going through. And so I need somebody to be more considerate and know that you don't say things like they're in a better place. And you know what? God loved them best. In those moments, just console and comfort somebody and stop saying things that you heard people say. Stop saying things that we have learned to say because they are not helpful. I need you to also know, please stop telling people at funerals that God does not make mistakes and God doesn't give us more than we can handle. I don't want to turn this into a Bible study, but the reality of it is the text and the scripture that people uses in those moments have nothing to do with God giving you more than you can handle. If truth be told, there are times that God gives us more than we can handle because we still have him. Either way, I don't need you saying that to somebody that is grieving and have just lost. Did you really just say that? And so for this episode, I hope it helps somebody to understand. Be careful what you say to people because you don't help, you actually hurt them more. And again, be mindful of what you say. Just let people tell you how they feel and what they need. Well, that's it for this episode on the Brief on Grief. I hope this episode helps somebody to stop saying the things they don't need to be saying and basically just do the best things of time and be quiet. As always, if you know somebody that this may help, please share it and subscribe to the podcast. View it on my YouTube channel. And as always, we all know somebody that is grieving, and that somebody might be you. Well, I'm looking forward to our next episode where we will be talking about comparative grief. I'm so glad you tuned in, and thank you again, and see you next time on the Brief on Grief.